Michael Moore has a new film.
New Michael Moore film, Capitalism, a Love Story. Now, in the past, Moore and I have had a slightly fractious relationship.
He's unaware of this fact.
Of course he is. He's much too famous to be aware of it. And particularly with the Fahrenheit 9/11, which everybody loved and I thought was rather too full of itself. Capitalism, a Love Story is perhaps his most polemical work to date. Its thesis, broadly speaking, is that capitalism has let down America really badly, and loads of people have suffered as a result of the capitalist system, which was intended to give everybody the freedom to excel in all these wonderful freedom of choice ways. But in the aftermath of the banking collapse, he started doing this straight after Fahrenheit 9/11, but then it ended up being essentially about the banking collapse. He's turned his attention to the entire capitalist system and said, hang on, isn't it fundamentally soft? Now, before we play a clip, let me point out this is a film which ends with a lounge singer singing the Internationale, and a film in which the word socialism features on several occasions. I mean, obviously, Capitalism, a Love Story, is something which therefore invokes, by default, capitalism, socialism. Okay. Anyway, here's a clip, and then we do the review.
See that guy standing next to the president? You know, the one that looks like a butler? His name was Don Regan, the chairman of Merrill Lynch, the richest and biggest retail brokerage firm in the world. He took the key position of Treasury Secretary so he could enact the tax cuts that the rich wanted. Regan then became White House Chief of Staff as the president started to fade.
Then they should give the president what 43 governors have, a line item veto. And
don't have to speed it up.
Who tells the president to speed it up? The man from Merrill Lynch, that's who. Things in America would never be the same again. The country would now be run like a corporation.
We're going to turn the bull loose.
Now, the interesting thing about this is that in the past, one of my problems with Moore has been that he essentially, in pursuit of his argument, he, let's say, uses evidence and facts in a way which is not entirely unbiased. I mean, that's fine. He's making a polemical argument, okay?
Playing fast and loose with the truth, are you saying?
I'm saying that he's very... I mean, the big example of this is in the case of Sicko, right, in which he's making a general argument, which I completely agree with, which is that the private healthcare system in America is disastrous. And he then points out at one point that the national healthcare system in Britain is much, much better. But in describing the national healthcare system here, he does it in almost parodic terms, which gives you the impression that basically we are living in Narnia with our NHS. And when I was in the Cannes screening of that film, I remember people who were British actually laughing at the depiction of the NHS, because wonderful and fabulous as the NHS is, and it is, there are things about it that are, that are failing. And he paints this picture of it that literally you go to spanking clean hospitals, you get brilliant 5-star treatment absolutely immediately, and then as you leave, they'll give you money. Now, so no, but it's essentially.
I want to go there.
Essentially, what he's doing is, he's caricaturing, for a purpose. Here's the thing with Capitalism, a Love Story. I really liked it. Now, the two reasons that I really liked it, and I should be upfront about this. Obviously, for somebody whose political opinions are as mine are, I was kind of...
Former trot.
I'm basically predisposed to like something which basically says the American capitalist system is completely shot. There are some things in it in which Moore does the usual thing, the grandstanding thing, the stunts thing, and the stunts aren't that great. At one point, he tries to put a police line round Wall Street as a crime scene, and he goes to the banks to demand the money back that's been invested in bailing them all out. And that's the usual sort of Michael Moore grandstanding stuff. However, there are some real shockers that he turns up. He turns up this extraordinary story about big companies insuring their workers. So if the low-paid workers die, the companies make money out of it. Something which apparently is referred to as the dead peasant insurance, which is just mind-boggling. I'd never heard of it before, and it's really quite shocking. He also has this very moving film of FDR talking about the Second Bill of Rights, which I hadn't seen before. I looked into this a little bit. Apparently the film wasn't believed to exist for a while, but he did unearth it. And it's this extraordinary document of FDR declaring that actually everyone should have right to a useful and remunerative job, the right to earn enough to provide adequate food, the right of every family to a decent home, right to adequate medical care, the right to adequate protection from economic fears of old age. I mean, essentially what amounts to what may be called a socialist doctrine of equality. It's a very moving piece of footage. Now, for the culture...
Yeah, but FDR wasn't a socialist, was he?
No, he wasn't. But what's amazing is...
Many liberals who would listen to that.
No, okay, fine.
Many conservatives listen to that and go, yeah, I agree with that.
Well, actually, no, because what you don't have in America is all of those things. You don't have the right to adequate medical care and the opportunity to achieve and enjoy a good life, the right to adequate protection from the economic fears of old age, sickness, accident, and unemployment, the right to you don't have any of those things. I interviewed Robert Peston, the BBC's business guy.
Economics.
Yeah,
Business editor.
And very smart. And I interviewed him about Capitalism Love Story. And I went and said at the very beginning, look, I've got to say, as a former old trot, any film that ends with a lounge singer singing the Internationale, I'm predisposed to like. And much as in the past, I have found a lot of Moore's grandstanding quite difficult. I actually thought this worked. I thought the whole thing had a thesis that played out. My only problem was that at the very end, he kind of shies away from saying the thing which you kind of want him to say, which is I'm a socialist, and he says actually what I want is democracy, blah, 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 blah. It's fine. But Robert Peston said, in essence, pretty much everything he says is right. That his analysis of capitalism as having completely let down the American working man was right. That his analysis of the collapse of the banking system was right, only faulted in that Robert Peston said if we hadn't bailed the banks out, it would have been worse. But essentially, all the stuff that Moore talks about in being, and this is somebody who doesn't have anything invested in agreeing with Moore, said, essentially he's completely telling the truth. And also said that his feeling about it was that watching the film, you were amazed that more people in America hadn't stood up and said, hang about a minute, this system is doing all of us a lot of harm. Now, what was interesting to me was that, obviously I know as I said, you said boring former old trot, right? But to hear somebody like that say, actually, I've watched the movie, I've studied it with my massive brain because he's a very intelligent bloke, and essentially, he's telling the truth.
He said, so Robert Peston said, I've watched it with my massive brain.
No, I'm obviously glossing the fact. He wouldn't ever say that, but he does have a massive brain, clearly, because he's who he is. And so I enjoyed it. There were much fewer moments in it, far fewer moments in it that made me go, stop grandstanding and, make the film. I thought its general thesis overall was completely right. And somebody who politically is a million miles away from me agrees that its general thesis is all right. And I thought it was also dramatically engaging and often quite funny. And the film of FDR was very moving. And Michael Moore, thumbs up.